Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Today, very fortunate to have James Michael Dorsey here with us. He is a renowned explorer and author and a few other things. So, Jim, so happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Right before I pushed the record button, we had a conversation about how I was going to introduce you. And then the first take, I kind of messed it up already. I think I was a little distracted. And now that we're back and everybody's actually listening to this part of it, you had mentioned that there's another author, kind of outdoors explorer type. I don't know if you'd call him that, but you mentioned he's got the exact same name and he's an author. And that started a conversation and I felt like I should have pushed the button. So I don't know if we can pick it back up, but so what differentiates you and what you do from this other guy with the same name, just in case someone goes and does a Google search after listening to this?
Well, he's based in Istanbul and he has his own website, but primarily he writes about sports in the Middle East. And he's an international correspondent. It's just that we have both written for some of the same publications, so we get mixed up on the internet a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've received a couple of invitations to places in the Middle East because they thought I was him, and I said I'd be happy to go, except you're going to be disappointed when I get there.
Inviting you to like soccer games and stuff like that. Well, good. I'm happy we got that cleared up. So if someone, we're going to have a link to your website right in the show notes, so there shouldn't be too much confusion. But if you are listening to this in the car and you search them up later on and you're seeing stuff in Turkey that's sports stuff, that might be the wrong guy, is what I'm hearing.
The big difference is I have hair.
Well, that's a good one. You do. You've got a nice head of hair. I'm a little shorter than yours. But anyway, Jim, so happy to have you here. I learned a little bit about you recently, and you've got a wide variety of things going on. I don't know where this conversation is going to end up, but I know where we should start. And well, I don't know where we should start. I want to ask you, where should we start? Let's go back as far as we need to go to help people kind of understand how you got into doing the type of stuff that you've done over the years. I don't know how far back in history we need to go. What do you think?
We can go back to about 1996, there around. My wife and I, it was going to be my wife and I, our 25th wedding anniversary. We wanted to do something different. So we went on a long-range sea kayaking trip in British Columbia. And the first hour on the water, we ran into a pod of orca whales. And the fact that I was still alive after that encounter fascinated me. And so I started taking classes and educating myself about animals, cetaceans, whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Got certified as a naturalist because that's how serious my interest got. At the same time, that trip to British Columbia was the first time I had truly met really indigenous peoples. And that also fascinated me. So over the next 3 decades, I was kind of alternating between documenting vanishing tribal cultures in remote parts of Africa and Asia, and part of the year working as a cetacean naturalist, mainly at a gray whale sanctuary in southern Baja. It occurred to me not long after I started doing this that they're both really the same pursuit of vanishing cultures, because where I worked with the whales down in southern Baja, it is a vanishing culture. It's a small lagoon. Only 400 people live there year-round, absolute wilderness where the desert meets the ocean. And eventually that will be a vanishing culture too. So the two are actually linked. My two pursuits are really linked if you look at it that way.
I'm curious, when you mention the vanishing culture, my head went to something more about the whales, but then I realized maybe you're speaking about the community there in Baja, so help me understand.
Both, yeah. Climate change has taken a heavy toll on the whales. Last year we had the lowest count in the Lagoon of whales in my memory. And it's going to get worse as climate change advances, yes. But also the people, because they're 35 miles from the nearest tree. I mean, where these people live, it's absolute wilderness. They're descendants of the original Cochimi people who turned back the Spanish conquistadors way back when. So, a tiny little isolated society like that can only last so long, and I've been very fortunate to have been a part of it for almost 30 years.
I hope that we come back to that because there's so many questions I can ask you about that. And if you don't mind, I'd like to go back a little further than you went because I'm curious. Like, you really kind of jumped in after this kayaking trip with the orcas. And I'm curious, what were you doing before that? And was there any point in your life that you could look back to and think, yeah, I probably should have started this sooner? Or what was going on before that trip?
Well, my wife and I always traveled a lot, and the more we were traveling, it was tourist travel, London, Rome, Paris, that sort of thing. But I was getting very unsatisfied. The cities were all kind of the same to me. I was more interested in the people. And I started going more and more off the beaten path. And one day I discovered the Los Angeles Adventurers Club and realized there's a whole bunch of guys out there that are leaving the beaten path for a life less mundane. I joined that club, and eventually I found out about the Explorers Club. And so now I'm a fellow of that also. And I've got this worldwide network of people who are out there having adventures and exploring. And so that's pretty much how I got started, through those two clubs and traveling with these people.
Very cool. And what were you doing before that?
I was carrying the U.S. mail.
Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. That's
that gave me a pension.
I don't know if that's
that gave me a pension and lifetime insurance so that I could pursue these other careers. Nice. So I took a very early retirement and hit the ground running.
As opposed to walking.
Yeah.
With your old job. I don't know if that was a good joke or not, but anyway.
Good.
Hey, so was there a point before you retired? I mean, were you already traveling when you were still working for the Postal Service?
Yeah, because I had so much seniority. I was getting 6 weeks paid vacation. And my wife was very flexible in her hours. She was working in high finance. So we were traveling a lot. But like I say, it was tourist travel in those days.
Okay.
Just slowly over the years, it evolved into remote travel. And my wife has been with me on most of that, too. She enjoys it as much as I do.
Very nice. So you were doing quite a bit of travel, even, when you were still working. I'm curious, was there anything in particular that inspired you to do that? Because not everybody does that. Not everybody works and takes their time and goes and explores the world, whether it's off the beaten path or traveling at all. Not everybody does that. So I'm curious, something in your childhood or people around you when you were growing up that inspired that, or how did that happen?
No, we had a couple of friends, 45 some years ago, who left their jobs and they wandered around Europe like nomads for about 6 months. And that just fascinated me, that they would even think of doing something like that. And I had no notions of it at that time. But when they got back, we talked and I started getting interested. And my wife and I said, why don't we do something like that? So we both got leaves of absence from our jobs. We went to Europe and we spent 3 months in a 2-person tent traveling all over Europe without any itinerary.
All right.
Rented a tiny car and drove ourselves everywhere.
That's even more something that not everybody does. Right. So that's, I'm trying to get a feel for just kind of your personality, like, because I don't know many letter carriers, to be honest with you. And I don't want to cross any boundaries here, but it doesn't necessarily seem like the type of job that would attract the personality that would go sleep in a tent in Europe. But no, maybe I'm wrong.
Not necessarily. Just for me, it was a steady job, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kept thinking, I'll do this until I find something better. And before you knew it, I'd been there 30 years. But I was illustrating magazines and books during that time. I've always drawn and painted, and so I was always doing other things. I mean, my only fear in life has been to live a mundane life, and so I've always been looking for something different to do. The further afield it got, the more I was interested in it. it just appealed to me, and it still does. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years. I'm an old man now, but we just got back from a trip to Scotland and Ireland, and I'm looking at going to Easter Island next year. So, it goes on. It goes on.
It's very cool. You might be, I don't know. I mean, you've got a lot of colleagues or that you've been around in the Adventurers Club or these different clubs that I've spoken with a lot of people that kind of are adventurous and do this stuff. And oftentimes a challenge that they run into in their lives is any sort of consistency, any sort of long job that they can actually, stick with long enough to get a pension. And so it sounds like you're an interesting mix of somebody who can kind of do the grind with some goal and focus for quite a while, and you also have the personality that obviously likes to get out there and explore things. And
that's true.
I guess I'm saying I'm jealous. I wish I could have. I was in the military shortly after school, and there's a few times that I think, man, maybe I should have stayed a little longer, and I would be retired by now, and I'd have that pension and all that. But
yeah,
I couldn't do it, so I'm jealous.
And I also started writing articles about my travels. So after about 1,000 rejection slips, I sold one. And so now I've been able to produce 4 books about my remote travels.
Very cool.
I'm working on number 5. So, yeah.
This is a writer's question because, I think that people could be listening to this, specifically this episode, because, if they're intrigued by the writing side of it. So you said you had a lot of rejections and then you got your first article published.
Mm-hmm.
Did it get easy? What would you tell somebody out there that's a travel writer I know things have changed. I know the industry has changed, but I suspect there's some still useful advice that you might give to someone that's waiting for that first publication. Does it get easier, or did you have to go another 200 rejections before you got the second one?
No, it really doesn't get easier. In fact, it's just really hard to say. Make sure you have a source of income. You can't really rely on being a writer these days, especially in my position, because I barely got through high school English, and to this day I cannot conjugate a sentence. I'm an instinctive writer. I'm an autodidact. I'm a storyteller more than I'm a writer. But I've had success because apparently my style resonates with a certain audience, and I get invited to speak a lot, and I read from my books when I'm doing that, and I've usually had a good response. So I thank God I just seem to have sort of a natural talent for it that took me all these years to discover.
That's very, very cool. And you have the voice for it. Anybody listening to this can obviously hear that, and you're well spoken. So I can see why they might invite you to come share some stories. And that's why I invited you. So thank you for being here. I'm curious because it sounds like your wife is still traveling with you, has been traveling with you for quite a while.
Yes.
What can you share with us about that? Because I think that can be an interesting thing. I suspect you two have been a lot more places than most married couples, and that can present its own challenges. And I suspect there's a lot of stories there, but tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we've been married 53 years now. I met her when I was in the Army stationed in Texas way back when. And she had no great inclination to travel until we made that first trip to Europe, and she had a great time. And it just slowly evolved over the years.
That was your first trip with her?
Yes, it was. Out of the States, yes.
That's a big trip
It
for
was
someone
very big trip.
Doesn't have a lot of inclination to travel. And here, let's go sleep in a tent in Europe.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good for her. Okay. Now I got to ask, because I'm single. Now I got to ask, how do you find that? What's the magic thing that's somebody like myself that loves to travel and has always struggled finding somebody else that would enjoy it as much as I do?
Well, when we first got together, neither of us had any idea this was going to be our life. So I don't know how to tell you how to find somebody like that. It worked. It just worked. We clicked. We found we had similar interests. And the more we did, the more we wanted to do. And we still do.
That's cool.
And she doesn't go with me all the time. A lot of my trips are very remote, very physical. And particularly in Muslim countries, she can't go a lot of the places I can go. Mm-hmm. So there are restrictions to it. And like I say, I've been in a lot of dangerous situations, and I don't want her to be there when I'm doing that. So there are
Okay.
limits. There are limits
She
to
probably
traveling.
appreciates that.
Absolutely. And she's come close to dying a couple of times on our trips.
Oh, geez.
She's a trooper.
So many different directions we can go with this conversation. Any particular stories come to mind that you think she wouldn't mind you sharing?
Well, we were invited to join a group of friends who were scientists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They wanted to go to a remote volcano in Ethiopia and study it because the friend that invited us was a volcanologist for NASA. She had discovered a volcano on Jupiter's moon Io and wanted to compare it to this one in the Ethiopian desert. So we had joined them. Well, we made it to the top of the volcano there, and we got shot at by bandits. And my wife broke her leg on the summit of the volcano while this was all going on. We ran into some nomads who had a camel who paid them a whole bunch of money on the spot and got her on this camel riding down the volcano. I had to hike out of there about 12 miles, and I was having trouble breathing the whole way. And I thought perhaps I was having a heart attack at some point. And when I finally got back to any place where I could get medical attention, it turned out that I had deep vein thrombosis or blood clots in my lungs. And all this was happening at the top of the volcano. And
wow.
We only found out a couple of weeks after we got home that my wife had a broken leg. So all of that was one little trip.
How long after that trip was it before she went somewhere with you again?
Believe it or not, the weekend after that, we were in New York for the Explorers Club dinner.
With a story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she was the big superstar there. People were whispering about this woman who broke her leg on top of a volcano in Ethiopia. And everybody wanted to meet her.
With armed bandits shooting at you and riding the camel, and oh my gosh. That's all right. Well, congratulations on still being married. That's pretty good. You must be doing something right.
Okay.
That's very, very cool. Curious, is there anyone else in your family or your world that kind of just doesn't get you?
Well, I don't have family anymore. They've all preceded me, but yeah, her family thinks I'm very weird, as do many of our friends. But we also have a lot of friends in the adventure genre, so it all works out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty cool. What's kind of, I don't want to jump to what's next. Let's jump back to the community. We were talking about the community in Mexico and Baja.
Yes.
Because I can tell this is an important thing for you. It sounds like you've really kind of grown attached to the place, the whales, the people. And with this community, maybe it sounds like, I heard everything you said. I guess my question is, what do they do now? You said 30 some miles from the nearest tree?
They're fishermen.
On the coast.
They're fishermen.
Probably that.
This is a lagoon. It's one of 3 great lagoons on the Pacific side of Mexico. And for centuries, they've all been whale sanctuaries. I work in the central lagoon, which is called San Ignacio. There's a little town off of Highway 1. From there, it's 35 miles out to the lagoon itself in the middle, like I said, where the desert meets the ocean. It's absolute wilderness. There's nothing around except, there is a permanent camp there. It's all solar and wind powered. We'd sleep in tiny little cabins. And for 7 months a year, all the people that work out there live out there. There's only about 400 in the whole lagoon. They are fishermen, and they make a very good living doing it. It's a very prolific place to fish. But for 5 months a year, they transition over to taking people out to see the whales. And the whales come to us. This is the only place on Earth where wild animals in their natural habitat routinely seek human contact. Now, most people look at that and they go BS, but it's a fact. And I've asked people for 30 years, if you can prove that's wrong, I'm listening, because it is a fact. And I have come to think of these people as part of my family, and that's how they think of us. And I go back every year. This year, next February, will be my 27th year doing this. Sometimes I'm down. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, explain to me, you said it's the only place, and I don't want to misquote you, but hopefully you know where I'm going with this. The only place where the animals seek the contact. And you said people sometimes tell you you're full of it. So help our listeners understand what that means.
Well, these are wild animals in their natural habitat. And think about that. Where else can you go pet a wild animal in its natural habitat that is coming to you because it wants to be touched by you? Because that's what these animals do. They come up to us to be petted. They put their babies on their backs and they bring them to us to show them off. They open their mouths because they want their tongue scratched and their baleen stroked. This does not happen anywhere else. On the open ocean, these same whales will not approach a boat because this has been...
Maybe this is a silly question, but why do you think they're doing that? I know maybe you don't know. What's your thought? Why are the whales wanting that kind of contact?
Well, twice in their history, at least recorded history, gray whales have been hunted to the brink of extinction, the very brink, because they're the slowest swimming whales and they've always been the easiest to be hunted. But as soon as, well, it goes back to the early 70s when things like the Marine Mammal Protection Act were first initiated. It would be better to illustrate this with a short story. In 1972, there was a Mexican fisherman in San Ignacio Lagoon named Jose Pacheco Mayara. Until that time, these whales were called devilfish, and they were thought to be killers because back in the 1850s, a San Francisco whaler named Charles Scammons sailed into San Ignacio Lagoon, saw thousands of whales, and the slaughter began over the next decade. There's no way to know how many he killed. Now, the idea was to harpoon a baby whale and bring it in close so its cries of distress would attract the mother and they could kill her. That's how they did this back then. So this was a killing ground. And Pacheco one day had a whale rubbing on his boat, and he was terrified that this devilfish was going to kill him. He leaned over the side. The whale was looking at him eye to eye. He reached over and he touched that whale, and the whale pressed against his hand. Now, this has been documented in an IMAX film, and Pacheco's been in definitive books about whales, especially Eye of the Whale by Dick Russell, a great book. He is considered the first man to touch a devilfish. And today, a lot of people call him the godfather of whale watching. Because until that moment, that touch, which was almost as famous as Michelangelo's touch on the Sistine ceiling now, that is supposedly when we went from thinking these whales to be killers to realizing they've been friendly all along. We were just too busy killing them to realize that. So now whale watching is a multi-billion-dollar industry every year. And San Ignacio Lagoon is one of the premier places on Earth to do this. And we all believe it started with Pacheco, and his family is still there. He's passed on, but his family still runs an operation.
I think there's probably many layers to this. I don't know much about whale watching. I've seen whales, but I've actually never gone out on a whale watching trip. I was on a boat once that was kind of like, let's go look for whales. But my understanding, if you were to ask, if someone were to ask me, hey, Jason, how do they do whale watching operations? I would think, okay, they take out the boats, but they can't get too close. They can't chase them. They can't do anything. And because you got to leave a lot of space and let the whales do their thing. And then I hear you talking about the whales approaching people in San Ignacio. Lagoon, was Lagoon Harbor Bay?
No, it's a lagoon.
Lagoon. The whales approaching, and it sounds like you can touch them and pet them. So help me understand this difference. Are there people in the community, in the whale community, if that's the right way to say it, that think you guys are doing something horrible by getting so close to them? Is this a controversial thing, or is this just... Help educate me.
There's a minority that believes we shouldn't touch these animals, but the fact is they are coming to us to be touched. We're not approaching them. When we're on the water, we cut our engines and we drift, and as soon as we do that, they come to us, and they always have. I've never spent a day on the water down there without having countless whales come up to me to be touched. And like I say, they don't do this anywhere else, so that's what makes it unique. It's a place of magic. It's a place of awe and wonder. Why do they do it? Who knows? Who knows? But they come to us in friendship, and we treat them as friends. And I've come to know individual whales over the years, from scarring, birthmarks, wounds, that sort of thing. And I am thoroughly convinced they seek me out when I'm on the water. Certain whales know me, and I know them. And that's one reason I return every year.
I can imagine. Are the whales there? Are they migrating through the area typically when they're
Yes.
there?
Now,
Or
there's over 80 species of whales, and this is the only species that does that out of all these whales. Now, the gray whales, they summer north of Alaska where they feed and get fat. They migrate 7,000 miles down to southern Baja to this lagoon, and then 7,000 miles back. And they're doing this constantly year round. They're migrating. It's the second longest aquatic migration. Only humpback whales migrate further. But as far as we know, they've been doing this for thousands of years. And because they're so slow swimming and they don't echolocate like dolphins, they have to hug the shore to navigate by underwater geography. And that's made them vulnerable. And that's also why they're the easiest whale to see. But I mean, when you're on a whale watching boat off the coast of California, you're lucky if you see a blow or a tail when they dive. They bring their flukes up. In Mexico, those same whales are going to come right up to you. You're in a 20-foot open boat, and the whale is 45 feet long and weighs 40 tons. And it's going to treat you like a bathtub toy. It's going to push the boat around. It's going to play with you. The babies try and jump in our boats. It's a whole different world in that tiny little lagoon. And people just
sounds very
can't even
cool.
imagine it until they've actually gone and done it.
Now, do you need to have some sort of reason to go there, some sort of affiliation, or is this a place that somebody listening to this right now could say, I'm going next summer, and they could just, I don't know, even summer, right?
Yeah, no, anybody
Yeah.
can do it. And it's from early January through mid-April. That's it. The whales come in about the end of December. They leave by the middle of April. And after that, it is illegal to be on the water with whales in the lagoon. After that, the community resorts back to fishing again. But anybody in the world can do it. And yeah, that's how I found this place. It's run by one family. They live there full time. They maintain the camp, and there must be 30 family members who do everything. Even the little kids have jobs to do, and it's a magnificent place for children to grow up out there. And I see 5 and 6-year-old kids who live there who know more about nature than professors. It's unbelievable. The people that spend their entire life in this lagoon, they are intimate with these animals, both on the land and on the ocean.
It's very cool. I'm curious because a lot of the folks that I have on the show are tour operators.
Yeah.
You know, it's very clear that they offer tours and that if you want to go on one of their tours, they can do that. That's not how you and I connected. And I'm just curious if somebody listening to this wanted, I mean, do you lead group trips? Or are you still doing that? It sounds like you had in the past. If somebody's listening to this right now and says, I want to go to San Ignacio and I want to go with Jim, is that something that you're doing?
Yes. In the early days, I was leading 3 or 4 trips a year, and they were brutal because back then we had to travel on the overnight public bus. And that was 24 hours from Tijuana to the lagoon. That was a tough one. Now we fly in a small plane from Tijuana right into a dirt strip in the lagoon. I only lead 1 trip a year now, but about a year and a half ago, I published a definitive work on the lagoon and the animals. It's called The Lagoon, and it's available at any bookseller anywhere. And since that book came out, I have been invited back the last 2 years for a travel with the author trip. And I'll be leading my second one next February, and there are still openings. And if anybody's interested, all the information, they can go to Baja Ecotours website, and all the information is there about how to join my group or to sign up for next year, because these trips sell out. There might be a space or two from a cancellation on my next trip, but usually it's sold out by November for February trips.
Okay. But it's good to know that you're doing those, you know, that since this is a podcast, somebody could be listening to this, you know, we're recording this in November of 2024, but somebody could be listening to this in a year or so. You mentioned the website was Baja Eco Tours.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. .com, I assume, because we're going to have your website link in the show notes. Is it possible to find information about that on your website as well? Or do I need to
I don't have it on my personal website right now, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to have a transcript of this conversation also in the show notes. So I just want to mention that. So if somebody wants to look that up, because that sounds pretty darn cool.
Oh, yeah.
Are you doing similar trips to other places in the world as well?
No. I just don't want to deal with the public anymore.
You sounded so inviting until you said that. I was like, man, I'd like to go on a trip with Jim. And then he's like, I don't like dealing with the public.
No, that's not it. I mean, that came out wrong. What I'm trying to say is, I don't want to be I don't want to be in charge of 15 or 20 people that I used to do that, you know? And we're riding a bus and you stop for the bathroom and it takes me a half hour to go find everybody again and get them moving. And it was like herding cats.
Because Bill's out behind smoking his cigarette and everybody's waiting on him. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Was it. That was it. But I kept doing that because it was allowing me to go down there and be with the animals. So I'm not that much into guiding the people down there anymore. But when they're down there, yeah, I'm there. I'm giving lectures every night. I'm out on the boat with them. I'm telling them about the animals. I'm trying to educate and enlighten them, and we all have a great time. And I do enjoy being with the people. I just don't want to have to be in charge of the logistics of getting them from San Diego all the way to southern Baja.
I get that, and it was just funny the way you said that to me. It was, okay, but I got it. I was like, yeah, I've led a lot of group trips. I've spent a lot of time, and I love people. But yeah, it can be when you're worrying about every little detail, especially when you're doing the public bus from. I've been on the public bus from Tijuana. I'm not that far south, but yeah, that can be a challenge, I can imagine.
And I'd like to add that it takes a certain kind of person to make this trip because it is a real wilderness trip. And it is time consuming and it is expensive. And if you're going to go all the way down there, you're a certain kind of person that, you're my kind of people. We're going to get along. I mean, this is not some place where bitchy tourists are going to go. That just doesn't work.
I love it. But that's a good thing to mention too, because I think with tourism or whatever, just in life, setting appropriate expectations and trying to make sure you've got the right people along with you it makes things a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people show up and complain about the silliest things, and I go, "Why are you here if that's what you're like?" But not too many of those.
What did you think?
Not too many. They're there because they love nature and they love the animals, and that's what it's all about.
I was in the Amazon in Colombia a month or two ago, and stayed at this beautiful eco lodge. I don't even like to use the word lodge, but a beautiful place in the jungle, right on the banks of the Amazon River. And we had some people in our group. These are all travel professionals that I was traveling with. It was a little fam trip. And we had a couple of people in the group that encountered tarantulas and things like that in their room. I was trying to think of tarantulas and bats, and they weren't that happy. And we did the room change. I got to go stay in the room with the bats and the tarantulas because the ladies didn't want to. So, but what I thought was interesting, the reason I bring it up is the manager there at the place said, you'd be surprised how many people have stayed here and complain about the birds in the morning. It's so noisy. I can't sleep. These birds, and this is not a place you fly to. It's not a place you take an Uber to. It's in the jungle on the banks. You got to get there by boat and all this stuff. And I just thought, yep, that sounds about right. People come out there and complain about the monkeys and the birds and stuff, waking them up in the morning. And it's kind of interesting.
I know.
I don't know the answer to it.
There's always one person like that. They didn't read the fine print on the website, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, you're like, where did you think you were going?
No, we make it very clear that this is a wilderness trip, and you have to be prepared for certain things, We've never had any terrible things happen, and I can think of maybe 3 or 4 unhappy clients out of the probably 2,000 or 3,000 I've taken down there over the years. So there's always going to be somebody with something to complain about. But
yeah. And that could have to do with whatever they've got going on in their relationships. I remember I was managing a place in Belize. We were 30 miles offshore on an atoll, and we'd get a new group of people every week, and usually 15 to 20 people. We'd go into town, we'd meet them at the airport, put them on the boat and take them out. And I remember one time this woman got off the boat when I met her at the dock, and she got off the boat and she looked me straight in the face and said, "This was my husband's idea. I don't want to be here." Great, we've got a week. And it was very clear that this was not the trip that she had planned when she's like, "Oh, we're going to the Caribbean. We're going to stay at an island resort in the Caribbean." And this was a fishing and scuba diving lodge with some ecotourism activities. But it was very clear that she's mostly just pissed off at her husband. And, by the end of the week, she was the one giving the big hugs and everybody, everything was so amazing. And it just became, sometimes people just carry so much stuff with them that hopefully they'll get over it before the end of the trip, but not always. And I know any tour operators listening to this can tell a ton of stories very, very similar, but anyway, so I understand when you're like, I'm not a people person. Just kidding.
Yeah, do you have time for a very quick story here?
Absolutely. We got all the time in the world.
All right. This is actually in my book, The Lagoon, also. We fought a great battle against the Mitsubishi Corporation, who wanted to install a huge salt works which would have destroyed this lagoon. And this went on for years of litigation.
A huge saltwater what?
A salt works to make industrial salt, because these lagoons are salt flats. And so anyway, we had a lot of people in camp protesting this thing a few years ago. And one of them was a senior lawyer from the National Resources Defense Council, which have been great defenders of the lagoon for us. After this one fellow went home, he wrote a letter to the guy who runs the company, which I found hilarious. It said, "I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the whales and enjoyed petting them and all of that. But I never slept at night because I heard them blowing and there were coyotes in the distance yelling. And I just could not fall asleep." And he says, "I will not be coming back. And you have to understand, I'm a Jewish man from New York, and I need helicopters and police sirens and people yelling in order for me to sleep at night." And he wrote that letter to the company, and he said, "This is why I won't come back. It's too peaceful."
Well, that's funny. Without the, actually, that reminds me of just a thought I'd had. I spend a lot of time in Colombia. I'm in Colombia right now. And I've stayed in some of the, I guess you'd call them the barrios, the neighborhoods.
Yes.
And especially on the weekends, there's a lot of music and a lot of partying, and it gets very, very loud. Even on weeknights quite often. And then the fireworks, and, because they start celebrating Christmas in about October. So they've got all the fireworks and everything. And I remember laying there one night, I was staying at this place. I remember laying there thinking, I bet people that live in this community, when they go out into the jungle or out into peaceful environments, or even just a run-of-the-mill town in central United States, they probably can't sleep.
Yes, right.
Because they're so used to this. And I was thinking that I should, because I kind of enjoy this audio recording and stuff, and I thought I should make a soundtrack of the hood that people can put it on YouTube, and when they're off somewhere else, and they can play that so they can fall asleep.
That's it, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
We're
such creatures of habit, aren't we? So you've been to a ton of different places. We discussed Ethiopia. We discussed, and I'm just curious, are there any other places just have you super excited right now, or that you just think we really need to mention? The podcast isn't all about places, but this is how we get to what you're interested in. So what do you think?
Well, I'm looking at Easter Island next year, because now that they've uncovered the lower half of these moais, the giant carved statues, we're realizing that there's more of them underground than where it's above ground. And I'm also fascinated about the Birdman culture that existed there thousands of years ago, which there's not enough time to go into, but it's just these old indigenous stories that I like to seek out all over the world. I've been to 60 countries so far, most of them way off the beaten path. I tend to go where tourists don't go, because I'm always looking for the history behind how things came to be.
Do you ever look around and say, wow, there's no tourists here, I must be in the right place? Or is that only me that comes up with that?
I have been in many of those places, and sometimes in situations where I wish there were people around. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. There's there can be that as well. You just going to keep doing this forever?
As long as my body lets me. Yeah. I mean, I'm slowing down. I've got arthritis in my knees, and I've got titanium all over my body, and I wear 2 hearing aids. But I'm gonna do this.
It's not stopping you yet.
No, I'll do this as long as I can, because there's always going to be some place I haven't seen, or somebody I want to meet yet.
And are you still writing?
Every day if I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly I'm writing short stories these days. I don't know if I have another book in me. That last book took a lot out of me. That was 2 years of my life. It didn't sell the way I hoped it would, and I'm thinking about a fifth book. I've got most of it put together, but right now I'm writing short stories.
What do you, I don't know, I feel compelled to ask this. It's not really what why we're here necessarily, but I'm compelled to ask, what do you think about AI and writing? And have you gotten to the point where you're like, okay, I'm interested enough that I might go take one of my short stories and put it through there and see if it looks any different or if I like it or I hate it? Have you done that?
I have not done that. I do use AI to get a little information, and then I compare that against other websites and see what I come up with.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, no. I'm afraid AI is going to take over to the point where people won't have to have any education. They just press a button on their laptop and it does everything for them. And I'm too old to go in that direction. I'm a dinosaur in that respect, and I'm just fine. I mean, I got to where I am in life without AI. More power to those who want it, who use it. That's fine. It's just not for me. And I could change my mind in the future too. I just don't have anyone that would show me the intricacies of it, and I'm not that interested in learning. So
no compelling reason to jump on board. I've always been interested in technology, so I find it fascinating, but I also find the traditional storytelling that, you know, your story, you shared a couple stories with us that other people might interpret a totally different way, and they might write them or tell them a different way. So I love hearing the authentic story that comes from you, as opposed, it's just, that's so much more valuable. Like I have no desire to interview an AI chatbot for my podcast.
right.
Like that'd be like gouging my eyeballs out with ice picks. And at the same time, I do bump in there. I've noticed recently, I used to use Google a lot, and now I'm transitioning more into that. But that's not. I was just curious what if you had gone that route or not. But that's not really key to what we're discussing. Actually, we've discussed a lot of things, and there's so many more. Actually, when you mentioned the bird man on Easter Island, right?
Yes.
Is that an Easter Island thing? And you said, oh, well, that's a whole nother story we don't have enough time for. Immediately, honestly, what popped into my head, Jim, is we should do a whole series of podcasts just with your stories, the Jim Story Podcast. And each episode you should share a story like that, because I really actually want to hear the story. But I also, want to be respectful of your time. So let's come back and maybe do that. I don't know. What do you think?
I would
want to start a podcast series with me?
Sure. In fact,
that'd be cool.
My first 3 books are all short story collections. They're all standalone, independent narratives about particular places and people I've been, and what I've been, the interaction I've had with these people. And if I do put out another book, it'll probably be a short story collection. So I've got enough to keep you busy for many years if you're interested in that.
I think it'd be pretty cool. So,
and
I'll have to discuss that.
I haven't even told you I haven't even told you the really far out ones yet. So
okay, all right. Well, do you want to? I was mentioning we've discussed a lot of stuff, and I was going to ask you: is there anything I forgot to ask you, should have asked you, or any stories that any more stories you want to share before we wrap it up for this episode? We'll come back and do more, but for this episode, is there anything we should discuss?
My favorite story of all time, and I actually won an international competition with this because most people didn't believe it was true. I went to see one of the last true hunter-gatherer clans in the African continent in western Tanzania. They're called the Hadza people, or Hadzabe, and there's about 3,000 of them altogether. But out of those, there's about 300 that are true hunter-gatherers. And I went to see these guys, and to make a long story short, because it would be a very long story, without my knowledge, they took me on a hunt for a baboon, and they maneuvered me as bait to where the baboon would attack me and they could kill it.
Uh-huh.
And I came very close to being ripped apart by a wild animal on that trip. And my immediate reaction after I realized what had happened, because this baboon confronted me in the bush about 20 feet away from me, and as soon as it did, I'd had no time to even be afraid before they dropped it with 2 arrows. And it was only then that I realized they had me covered all that time, and they were putting me where the baboon would attack me. And I wasn't aware of this until the last second. So my immediate reaction was extreme anger that they had done this. But within a few seconds, I calmed down. I realized, man, I just got the greatest travel story of my career, and nothing will ever top this. And so I wrote that story. It became the cover of my third book. It's called Baboons for Lunch, and it won an international writing competition. So that's my favorite story.
That's very cool. It's I find difficulty, or I shouldn't say it that way, but I recognize that different cultures, different things sometimes can be hard to read into. I look at things through my lens, and if I just based on just what you just told me, I think I'd be like, man, they're like either messing with me, this is some sort of like, won't this be funny? Take the white guy out and get him to pee his pants or whatever, or that would be my initial thought, because I suspect that someone else in their tribe could have stood there and been bait, but they chose you. Or was this a great honor that they were bestowing on you because you were a guest and they wanted you to feel like you were really part of the, I mean, did you ever get to the bottom of it, or do you have a story for what they, maybe why they did that?
I think most of it was, let's get the white guy and use him. Why waste one of our own?
I would have came to the same conclusion.
But like I said, it was not done with any malice. These guys were such deadly hunters. I mean, they're like 5 feet tall, and they pull a 6-foot bow that would drop an elephant in its tracks. I mean, these guys are up from the jungle, and they had me covered the whole time. I was never in actual danger. I just didn't realize that until the final moment.
What did they just put you on a spot and say dance around and get a lot of attention?
No.
And, I mean, did you even?
No, they took off. I was tracking them through the bush on a hunt, and they left me behind. But I was following their tracks because it had rained all night long, and there were tracks in the mud. And every now and then, one of them would pop up out of the bushes and give me a hand signal: "Go this way, go that way." And they were directing me. And I thought, okay, I just want to be there when they make a kill, so I can document that. That's what I'm doing. And what they were doing was directing me to this thicket of bushes where they knew this baboon was hiding. And once I got close enough, it came out and wanted to kill me. And I neglected to
kind of like
before they even took me on this hunt, they tested me. They didn't just accept me into their clan. And this is something that happens in remote societies all over the world. When I first got there, they wanted me to make fire using friction. And I did that. It took me 3 tries. Then I had to smoke with them. Now, this is also something that happens a lot in these societies. A lot of times it's tobacco, other times it's ganja. That particular time it was really strong ganja, and I did not want to be in that shape for a baboon hunt, but if I didn't do it, I would not have been accepted.
right.
So, and after I got stoned, they wanted me to shoot a bow and arrow. So, yeah, I managed to stick an arrow.
They probably really enjoyed you. I'm just thinking they really enjoyed having you around camp. They're probably still telling stories as well.
That's true too, and if I'm one of their campfire stories, I'm honored. So,
right, yeah, that's.
So I had to go through those 3 tests before they even took me on their hunt, and when they did, I was one of the guys. I mean, after they made the kill, they smeared my face with blood, which meant I was part of the hunt. They decapitated the animal, and we took it back to camp, and I had to eat the first piece, which was terrible. It was stringy and tough and tasteless, but I had to do it because I was their guest. So that's how it is with these sides.
Do you recall any, like, these tests, get stoned, shoot the bow and arrow, go on the baboon hunt? Do you remember hearing any laughing at all?
Not during that time, no, none at all. It wasn't like they weren't patronizing me. They wanted to see, is this just some tourist who's going to go no and walk out of here, or am I going to put up with their BS and go along with this? I wanted to be, and I've done this with so many tribes around the world. I mean, I immerse myself in them for the time that I'm there with them. I try to live as they do. I eat what they eat. I sleep where they sleep. I dress like them if I can.
I think you're inspiring a lot of people. I'm sorry to cut you off there.
I spent a month crossing the southern Sahara with Tuareg nomads, and they dressed me in their own robes, and they accepted me as a brother, and They put me on a fine camel and they took care of me, and I rode with them for the better part of 3 weeks. It was fantastic, and no patronization there. They were honored that I was interested in their society.
Yeah.
That's been the case more often than not, because I get asked a lot, how do people accept you in these places? And I've never run into any open hostility anywhere except in Alaska.
Really?
Yeah, in Alaska.
Okay, there's a story there.
Well, no, I visited a number of very small towns that had signs that basically said white people aren't welcome here. And that's the only place I've ever run into that anywhere in the world. Like I said, in these very remote jungle villages, I've had people welcome me because I'm interested in them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I was like, what makes you different than maybe someone else that has wandered through their village in the past, and why do they accept you so much? But you answered the question. I believe is because you're open. They're open to you because you're open. You want to learn about them. They want to learn about you, and that makes a huge difference as opposed to maybe we think of the traditional missionary that would come in and try and change everything. I don't want to hear about your culture, your society, your belief. I want to change something. And I'm not ranting on religion. Or the tourist that comes in and I just want a picture with somebody that looks different than me.
Yeah. And
right.
This is happening across the globe. These remote vanishing societies, they're contracting with safari companies now because in the modern world, it's really the only way they can survive. They're sharing what was once sacred and secret ceremonies and costumes with tourists now in exchange for money because it's necessary, the point that the modern world has evolved to. And if they don't join the modern world, they're going to perish. And a lot of them have realized that. And that's why a lot of them have gotten commercial. The first group that I saw really doing this was the Maasai. And I've seen it in so many places now. The Dogon in Mali, one of the most ancient societies on Earth. They believe they came from a distant star and travel back and forth at will. They're now putting on facsimile dances for safari companies. And I get this, because for a lot of people, it's the only way they'll ever see these people. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
It's some people hate zoos because they don't think animals should be locked up. That's one side of the story. But the other side is people will never see these animals if they don't go to a zoo. And it's the same issue with me, I hate to see these places getting commercial, but if they don't, they're going to vanish without people knowing they existed. And that's part of why I write about them, trying to give them some small public voice that says, hey, we were here, and then they're gone.
So recently I had learned that, one of the challenges with these communities, you've got an indigenous community that, all of a sudden starts to rely on tourism for the food and the resources that before they had grown themselves or they had traded locally in exchange for whatever. And now the tourism comes in and now they're able to go buy the food, or they're able, it becomes more of a cash society, I think. And we can say, well, that's necessary in order for them to survive in the changing world and all this. But then we were reminded a few years ago that tourism can stop really, really fast. So some of these communities that had become so dependent on the tourism, they let their fields go fallow, or I'm not sure that's the right word. They quit doing the things that they'd done in the past. And then when the tourism went away, they didn't have all of the cattle. They didn't have the crops. I'm not guessing they didn't forget how to do it, but that was a huge impact on them. And since you have so much experience with so many different indigenous communities, I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, a specific question? I wasn't.
Yeah, well, it's just, have you run across communities that have become, is there such thing as becoming overly dependent on the tourism? I'm sure there is.
Yes.
With the concern that if the tourism stops, they've kind of shifted their life into the tourism business. And now these people that for millions of years or whatever have been feeding them, thousands of years, have been feeding themselves just fine. And now they're so completely dependent on tourism that one pandemic shuts down the tourism business. And now you've got serious problems that are not climate related necessarily. It's just dependency. So I was just curious if you saw that, experienced that, or if you have any thoughts on that.
I've run into it a number of places, especially in smaller villages. People that have had nothing are suddenly introduced to the the material goods that come in with trekkers and tour buses, and they get a little taste of that, and they like it, and they don't want to go back, so they start catering to that. And I've seen that happen all across the globe.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's I was in one community, and they said we're very conscientious about trying to make sure that these communities don't give up their traditional sources of, food, the sources, I won't say revenue, but don't give up their traditions that they can survive on in exchange for, 100% survival from tourism, because then the tourism goes away for even a few months, and you've got a major problem. So I was just curious if that had come up in your travels. It sounds like it has.
Yeah, absolutely it has. They get dependent on things from the outer world, and their way of life changes rapidly.
Yeah. And I can see the flip side is like, well, who are we to say that they can't do whatever business they want to do? Who are we to say that they can't have cell phones, or they can't have this or that? Because that's a tough thing that,
well,
I don't know.
That's true also.
A lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, because our ancestors all came from less than what we are now, and they evolved at some point, and that's just life, is we're always evolving at some point. But I'm just sorry to see it so widespread at this point across the developing world. But at the same time, I'm very glad I got to see these cultures before they changed. And if they're in transition now, if the only way to go is to see a cultural village, then I say go do it and learn all you can about these people before they're gone completely.
Well, I think that that's a very valid point, because if we just stay at home and don't go visit places and try and expand our knowledge, then that doesn't help either.
Right.
I think it's important to connect with other communities. I mean, it's the name of the podcast, Big World Made Small, was all about, let's go out there, explore, let's have conversations, let's see what we can do to increase cultural understandings, connections, and stuff like that. So it's something I'm interested in. It clearly is something you're interested in. So appreciate you taking some time to come share some stories, and I'm excited. So I'm going to have your link to the website right in the show notes, and it's with all these books and things that you've written, short stories. Is there anything you want to share about that? I mean, is that stuff that people can get connected through your website if they want to get your books and stuff like that? Or is there something we need to add?
No, they can order my books. They can find the books on my website, and they can order them from any major bookseller there is. I'm all over the world right now, fortunately.
And not to be confused with the guy in Turkey who's doing sports writing.
That's true. Yeah.
Different guy. I mean, I'm sure his books are good as well, but you're going to be disappointed if you end up buying the wrong book.
Well, I'm the real James Michael Dorsey, so.
Of course. Jim, I appreciate you. This was fascinating, and I see us having a lot more conversations in the future. Thank you so much for spending your time with myself and our listeners. Thank you.
I'm honored to have been here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.